This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, folks. Welcome to this month's featured webinar on the impact of 5G sunset on fleet management technology platforms. This webinar is sponsored by Northland Insurance, and as you heard, it's being recorded. I'm Amit Jain from Roadz, the marketplace platform which powers the Northland Marketplace. Over the next 30 minutes, you will learn how 5G sunset will impact the fleet management technology platforms you're currently using in your business. I'm sure some of you on this call are already going through the painstaking process of replacing the existing hardware in your fleets. I led Verizon's IoT strategy for many years and was on the leadership team at Verizon Connect, so really understand the processes involved that a solution provider has to undertake to get their devices certified on the next-gen network. This, for the most part, should not affect you unless the solution provider has waited until the very last minute to get their devices certified. And trust me, it's more common than you think. The issue of chip shortage has further complicated the 4G migration issue due to the longer lead times, as you guys have heard in the news. Hence, the issue of 3G sunset is a top of the mind issue for many fleets who can't afford to take their vehicles off-road in order to do this switch over. Today, please allow me to introduce Mauricio Berber from RMJ Technologies, who in a few minutes will discuss the impact of the 3G sunset, followed by an overview of the Omnitracs IVG solution. This solution, along with 35 other solutions, is available on the Northland Marketplace. I have put a link to the Northland Marketplace in the chat window, so at your leisure, you can go to and navigate through it. We will end the session by viewing this solution on the Northland Marketplace. Besides Omnitracs, we, like I said, have 35 other solutions which range across 16 different categories. Lastly, if you have any questions, please put your questions. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Please log in your questions there, and we will address those at the end of the session. So without further ado, Mauricio.
Thanks, Amit. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. So our agenda is pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about the 3G sunset that's happening today. We're going to highlight and talk about the carrier sunset dates. As Amit said, there's a huge semiconductor shortage at this time, and it's affecting every industry out there, and particularly, of course, the telematics service providers that are also having a hard time. We'll also do a brief overview. In the essence of time, it'll be a high-level overview of the IVG product. And then, of course, I'll hand it back to Amit for the marketplace demo. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the phone companies made a big announcement that they were going to go ahead and start sunsetting the 3G towers and the 3G networks. That was a big announcement that was made. Obviously, they had already successfully done so with the 2G, and now moving on to the 3G. So this means, of course, that the phone companies set a date for total shutdown. That doesn't mean that what they decided to do is to actually stop investing in the 3G infrastructure, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So as of today, the phone companies have been not repairing any of the towers that have been going down. So we're already seeing, and have been over the last year, different dark spots that are occurring, and that's basically means that a tower has either been damaged or is having issues, and the companies are no longer investing any more money on fixing that infrastructure. So we do have the date set for this, and it's right around the corner. It's actually scary because we've been talking about this for over a year now. So the sunset dates by carrier now. T-Mobile acquired Sprint, and the set date for the sunset on the Sprint network was supposed to be December 31st. So we had a huge panic that happened between October, November, December of trying to get folks to switch switch their 3G devices to 4G devices. And then there was an announcement towards the end of December that date had been postponed from December 31st to March, end of March for CDMA, and June of this year for any 4G LTE 3G devices out there. The next one that's right around the bend is going to be AT&T. Most, if anybody on the call is currently using Omnitracs IVG, then it's important that the customers understand that those 3G devices will be shutting down at the end of February. So there's a huge push that has that Omnitracs has made customers aware, and preparing them for this February sunset. Now, there has not been any type of announcement on the AT&T front that there will be a extension. As a matter of fact, from what we've heard, AT&T and Verizon are staying very put on their set dates. T-Mobile is going to be taking off their towers in July of this year, and then Verizon is scheduled to sunset December 31st. As I mentioned again, they are basically standing their ground on that, with the exception of Sprint. There wasn't an extension there. And as I mentioned before, the towers, as they are failing, they're not being fixed. So we're just going to keep seeing darker spots throughout the nation. And that basically is going to result in a lack of a device being able to communicate on that, or communicate with that tower, therefore transmit data. So it's really important to understand that the system will begin to lag in reporting back to the back office on ELD, which is important to have and be up to date on that. So this whole worldwide semiconductor shortage has caused a wave of demand. Obviously, in today's environment, Omnitracs is completely out of stock. They are not the only ones that are struggling with this, of course. Many other telematic service providers are on the same boat. And again, there was a perfect wave of, we have to replace these 3G devices within this year. And then there was a semiconductor shortage, which did not help the situation. So in the environment that we're in today, Omnitracs being one of the industry leaders in the transportation space, they are currently on a 2 to 3 month lead time. So their back order has now jumped up to 2 to 3 months. They are actually so short on inventory and trying to fulfill the 3G swaps that they're on a stance of giving priority to those customers that have, our existing customers have 3G devices and want to upgrade those. If a new order is to come in, we have been made aware that the order for a new system, because companies are often getting new trucks in, could be rejected as a result of them trying to focus on replacing those 3G devices for existing customers. So there is a possibility that if a new prospect or new company wants to join Omnitracs, they could be flat out denied on placing the order. That's how bad it's gotten. So the plan B that a lot of partners out there in the channel are using is XRS. XRS is more of a tablet-based solution, but there is no back order on that. There are 4G devices readily available. It's just a different user experience, because XRS is a Omnitracs company, now a Solera company, because they were recently acquired, but they work two very different interfaces, and I'll talk a little bit about that. One thing that we are cautioning customers about is to be careful of the switch game that's going around, where everybody, all the TSPs are under the same situation of semiconductor shortages, but we are seeing that sales folks primarily, are enticing customers to come on board to their company, promising them delivery of hardware well within, under 30 days. The reality is that we're all waiting. So it's kind of a bait and switch game where they're saying, come on over, sign the contract. They sign the contract, and then they hit them with the news of, oh, by the way, I was just told that it's a 90-day minimum wait type situation. So it's really unfortunate that's going on out there, but we're hearing more and more stories of this, especially now that we're getting closer. People are very desperate. They don't want to have their trucks parked due to compliance. So they're just trying to do anything and everything they can. The good news is there is still XRS available today, which can be shipped and delivered to a customer within 15 business days. The industry average in itself is between 2 to 8 months. We've seen wait times as long as 8 months for the smaller TSPs in the business. So real quick, Omnitracs overview. For those of you that are not familiar with Omnitracs, They were formerly known as Qualcomm. They've been through some transitions and acquisitions. Omnitracs acquired Qualcomm's division of ELD, electronic logbooks, and then they were recently acquired by Solera. So there have been a number of acquisitions that have happened. Omnitracs acquired not only the Qualcomm, but also acquired XRS and a number of other services and hardware systems to enrich their offering in their suite. They actually pioneered, the Qualcomm division pioneered the ELD industry over 25 years ago. So they were in and set up much longer before the mandate actually came into effect, into law. And I talk about that because there's a big difference. Once the mandate kicked in, all of a sudden you had all of these companies that came out of the woodwork, especially from China and overseas, that they were now in ELD. And basically what they said is, I have a GPS box you can plug into the truck, and it'll communicate with a tablet or a smartphone, and now you have an ELD. Well, not all ELDs are created equal, and customers have learned the hard way that drivers like something simple, something they can just jump into the truck and activate and go, rather than having to try to sync it. That's where a lot of the problems come that are out of the control of the fleet manager. So now they have nearly 1 million mobile assets over 60 countries. They do have a 24/7, 365 customer support that is bilingual, which is great because we know that the trucking industry is 24/7 operation, and so to be able to have a live person answer the phone if a driver has an issue, rather than them having to call a manager and wake them up in the middle of the night just because of a simple, technical issue. There is a team standing by to help and make that help with any issues that may arise. They do have nationwide service centers. These service centers are typically more of a convenience factor for the users of Omnitracs, where they have a network of shops where they can go in if it requires a hardware troubleshoot. They do have parts and inventory where they can make a quick swap and a quick fix. These are military grade devices, so they're not the consumer grade tablets that we talked about, where a tablet designed for a living room or a light duty vehicle sedan, for example, is much different than operating a military grade device, and we'll talk about that in a second. So when it comes to tablets, obviously the tablets are a little more advanced because you're having newer software. We do acknowledge that Omnitracs has more of a legacy product because it's been around for so long. Basically, their stance on that: if it's not broken, why try and fix it, right? So they've stood behind something that's solid, that they've invested a lot of infrastructure in. However, tablets come into the equation and they look a lot better. They look more inviting. They look more appealing to the eye, and then easier to navigate in some cases. So it is appealing because they do have faster reporting. Some of them do offer live tracking. It's a much better user interface, more advanced tech, and a lower cost on the hardware. Now, on the other side, we talk about the consumer grade of it, right? It's going to eventually require that you swap out those tablets sometimes every 6 months. So there is a long-term investment that you have to look at when tablets are deployed, as to how much time am I going to have to spend replacing these tablets, and not only just the actual cost of the tablet, but the time invested in having to make that swap. It's usually more complicated for drivers to use, often lost or stolen, often loses its charge due to the battery being exposed to extreme temperatures, especially in the heat. We tend to notice that the tablets getting that direct sunlight can overheat them or make the battery swell up, therefore causing it to have to be replaced. So they're replaced a lot more often due to its intended design. They're intended to be replaced every 2 years, because consumer products are constantly being changed and upgraded. But in an environment where it's very harsh environments, that life cycle shortens significantly. So we talk about military grade devices at Omnitracs IVG. For those of you that have never seen an IVG, this is specifically designed for the transportation industry. They took into account the harsh environments, the extreme temperatures, the vibrations, the big thumbs beating at the screen, and even the brightness in the cab, right? We're talking about them taking into consideration the lumens to avoid glare, the speakers being in the front to be able to hear because it's loud in the cab. So they took a lot of time to really understand and really cater to the industry that they were trying to be focused on. So they're integrated with top commercial service providers such as TMS programs, other dispatch systems. So they're already fully integrated with heavy hitters in the industry. It's a very easy to use system. It is very tamper proof. It is hardwired to the truck, and it lasts between 5 to 7 years, making it best in class in today's environment. The only cons, of course, is a little bit older technology. The pings are not as frequent. But in the trucking industry, you find that they don't have to be as frequent as the light duty space, like an ambulance company would need. And trucking, you just need to see really the destination and enough, of course, enough pings to be able to track your assets. But a lot of people put a lot of focus and emphasis on that, even though it's not really often used. The hardware is a little bit more expensive. We apply the you get what you pay for theory here. It is more of an upfront cost to the end user and customer, but it does last longer. So over time, the ROI becomes better over the course of 5 to 7 years, just because there's not going to be much replacement needed with this device. The monthly costs are a little bit higher. That's because it does include everything to do. They try to package everything that the customer will need for compliance purposes. So it's really an all-in-one encompassed plans to be able to let the customer maximize the use of the device that they're investing quite a bit of money in. Wanted to share some case studies with the group, and that is some recent wins that we've had. Obviously, Samsara has been knocking on doors, and they have now that they've gone public, they have a tremendous amount of revenue focused on trying to increase their user base. So they're going after everybody, and one of the main targets, of course, is Omnitracs in the ELD space. So Samsara is obviously enticing folks to jump on board and get free hardware and low monthly services. But Samsara is a tablet-based solution. So when it comes to tablet-based, as I mentioned, there are a lot of things that are out of the safety manager's control, and those things can lead to loss of time, loss of drivers, especially in today's environment where drivers are just essential. So we had some situations in existing customers where we had to really have this conversation of, hey, you have some 3G devices. Majority of your fleet is 3G, and you're going to have to make the change. Obviously, Samsara was there knocking on the door. For TM Transportation Services, they needed to swap out 250 units. Now, 250 units at nearly $1,000 a piece, that's quite a bit of money for them to invest, right? And obviously, Samsara on the other side is offering free hardware, very low monthly costs, including a camera. And we ended up still winning the business. It partially was due to relationship, but the other side was more so the TM team looking at it as this is a major overhaul to get all of our drivers switched over to try to learn a new system that requires a tablet, that requires all these extra steps that might confuse them and causes even more money lost in the long run. So they looked at it long term, and in looking at it that way, they decided to fork out the nearly $250,000 to stay with Omnitracs and to be able to utilize the system, continue using the system as they were. And the same thing happened with GRT. They were at 200 units, same thing. Samsara was there knocking on the door. As a matter of fact, a sister company of GRT in Mexico is using Samsara. And when we brought up the point of, hey, so understanding that Samsara, you're having good results in Mexico, remember that Mexico doesn't have an ELD mandate. So when you bring that over and it starts impacting your safety scores, that's a whole other conversation. And that really hit home, and they understood that the issues they were having over there could be amplified if we threw in a tablet, because they were just using the tracking portion on the Samsara side. So these conversations were really important to have, with customers. And we had these over and over and over and over with all of our customer base, understanding that, hey, it may seem like a very attractive offer, but just think of it long term. So Trancasa was another one of those companies that just decided, hey, it's not worth us doing the overhaul. It's not worth us losing, damaging our safety scores. So we're going to go ahead and stick with what we know works and we've trusted over the last 7 years. So those are really neat wins, because we were really going up against an incredible deal of no money up front, lower monthly, and they were lower by probably like $20. I mean, it was a significant lower monthly. So it was a very big win for us. These are all very big wins for us, but there's something to be said about that. All right. So real quick, a quick overview on the IVG. As I mentioned, robust military grade. This is what the driver sees in the cab. As you notice, you'll see the speakers in the front. This is a very bright screen. It'll read out what the hours, how much time they have left. Messaging, when it comes in, it can actually read it out loud for the driver, so they don't have to pull over to view a message. And they also can acknowledge receipt of the message when they receive it. There's navigations. There's a number of applications they can activate and use. These, of course, will be grayed out if they don't have them activated, but once they do, which they can turn on and off whenever they like, they can go ahead and have access to these applications, such as navigation, which is commercial navigation, and many others. Let's see, what else can I talk here? Idle, it really does a lot of the things that most companies, telematics service providers, have done a really good job at offering the same features: GPS tracking, geofence, odd hours movement, all of that stuff. They all do a really good job. Where I think some of them fall short is this ruggedness, the military grade, and then no wire splicing installation. Most customers choose to do their own installation, because in the old days we had a lot of different moving parts, and today they've evolved into being able to make it just a plug and play. They're able to just plug the device in, leave a port open for a mechanic to have access to it, but then there's no tampering from the driver. So it's a very, very solid system. I mentioned the fleet tracking. Here's what an example, the map, all the vehicles on the side. It's no different than a lot of the other companies out there who offer different types of mapping, whether it's satellite or your standard mapping, but you're also able to pull up your assets and your vehicles there. And then lastly, wanted to focus on the compliance piece. The compliance component is at the fingertips of the safety manager, who can pull up reports. In this case, they can click this little icons here, and they can pull up what the driver would see on their side, a graph of the logs. So essentially, we translated the manual logs into digital, and here's what the driver sees, same as the DOT officer if they request to see the logs from the driver. Now, the driver is going to be equipped with a laminated card that's going to go ahead and give the officer instructions on how to pull just DOT specific data they need, whether it's a scale or they got pulled over. They'll be able to handle the device over to the officer with that laminated card, and it makes it very simple for them to access the data that they need. Same thing with vehicle inspections. The vehicle inspections can be done in the cab digitally, so there's no manual paperwork needed. It's all digitized, and it makes it very easy for companies to run audits or go through audits much quicker, because they have everything available at their fingertips. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I know that for the essence of time, I kind of breezed through it, but I wanted to make sure I had left enough time for Q&A and to cover the pertinent 3G information. Back to you, Amit.
Thank you, Mauricio. I'm going to share my screen now.
Awesome.
So folks, as I had said before, I'm going to be taking you to the Omnitracs solution on the marketplace. Let me move this out of the way. So I posted the link to the Northland Marketplace in the chat window. So anybody who wants to navigate to that, please feel free to do so. So once you come to the marketplace, as I had mentioned before, today there are 36 solutions ranging across 16 different categories. These solutions are mostly designed to meet the safety, compliance, and risk management needs of heavy trucking fleets in the US. So if you want to navigate, basically you can scroll down the infinite scroll and look at all the solutions that are there. That's one way to get to the Omnitracs solution. Another way is on the left, there are all these categories of solutions. So you will go to the telematics category, and then you will be able to see all the different solutions. Obviously, today we are focusing on the Omnitracs IVG solution. Another way to get to the solution is we have a search feature on the marketplace. So you can type in either Omnitracs name, or you can type in telematics, and it'll give you a range of different options to go to, and then you can go to the solution card of your choice. Once you get to the solution card, it will have all the information you need to evaluate the solution. A short description, a longer description, a multimedia carousel where there's YouTube video, features and benefits, a little bit about the company, and then a section of downloadable resources like your product spec sheets and white paper, as you can see, that you can review at your leisure. On the top, there's also a section where it says who is it for, which is if the solution provider does not meet the needs of any fleet size or fleet class, then it basically will be highlighted here. So in case of Omnitracs, it basically serves fleets 5 vehicles or larger. Mauricio, I'm going to ask you in a second about the XRS solution, and then obviously it applies to heavy duty. You can see that there is a recurring component here, the monthly recurring, and you get 5% savings to buy the solution through the Northland Marketplace. Also, there's information about the one-time costs. Now, in order to get more information and get connected to a salesperson, you basically will click on the request info button, and it'll take you through a 3-screen process. Essentially, there's 5 questions, at the end of which you will request info, and then somebody will get in touch with you. So that's how you can come to and look at the Omnitracs solutions and other solutions on the marketplace. Now let's move on to some of the questions. One of the questions, Mauricio, actually, let's start off with the question of the XRS solution. Is that also for 5 trucks or more, or does it apply to even a single owner operator?
It actually applies for single owner operator. I personally haven't experienced the whole tablet. Ideally, it would be it's better suited for those that have like 10 and under. Again, that you minimize the amount of issues that can come up. But yeah, absolutely. One, there's no minimum there, and it's better suited for that target size.
Great, great, thank you. The question was about the information, the API information. Is that information available through the marketplace, or how does a customer get information through the APIs?
As far as what their back office, or as far as like where that information displays?
If the customer wants to integrate the information from the Omnitracs IVG solution into some other back office systems of theirs.
In that situation, what we end up doing is we end up getting with the technical team, with the Omnitracs technical team, and then we end up setting up a meeting with them to have, because there are going to be different types of wants and needs. So we put them together. They do an analysis as to what exactly they're gonna need, and then they cater to that.
Wonderful. One of the questions is what is the benefit of a customer going through RMJ Technologies, which is a VAR of Omnitracs, rather than going directly to Omnitracs? Is there a difference in cost, in terms of lead times, availability?
That's a great question. So yeah, so Omnitracs originally was a direct only, right? And when they were direct only, they were only catering to companies that had 100 plus trucks. If you were under that, and good luck getting a phone call back. They changed that when the mandate kicked into gear and said we're going to be leaving a lot of money on the table. We need to be able to cater to the owner operators, which when you add them together make up for a larger portion of trucking. So when they partner with companies like ours, we were one of the first companies that they partnered with, and we've been with them since the beginning, is that we're able to have access. So the pricing will not be any different from a direct. And actually we have better pricing because of the volume that we've all been able to bring to the channel. So when it comes to being able to get better white glove service, customers tend to really come to us. Some have grown from a couple of units to a couple hundred, and we still have them as customers. Our retention is at about 95%, and we've been awarded multiple times for our customer care. So it has to do a lot with the partner's experience and how their operation works. So we have a big team to cater to make sure that the customers are taken care of.
Wonderful. One last question is about somebody can buy these devices on Amazon, let's say. How do they differentiate whether they're buying a 3G or a 4G device?
That's another great question. So there has been a lot of that. Some folks, unfortunately, that have swapped over their 3G devices to 4, put it on the market, right? And that's something that's the way to protect yourself is you look at the serial number. If it's 1085 or higher, that's a 4G device. If it's 1085 or 1084 or lower, then you have a 3G device. And the other thing that people have to be cautious of is that they can buy a device and Omnitracs will require a bill of sale to make sure that that device can be in fact transferred. We have many cases where customers went and said, I'm going to get a cheaper device online, blah, blah, blah. They get it. Not only is it 3G, but the person who they was stolen from or taken from is not authorizing the transfer. So it's basically a paperweight, and that you want to protect yourself against that because that's happening a lot more nowadays.
Wonderful. I think that concludes our session. Thank you for your insights, Mauricio, and everybody else. Thank you for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.